Don't forget to subscribe to the Meticulous Manicurist nail tutorials, where we're setting a new standard in nail education, utilizing real life, real situations for real learning. Hi everyone, thanks for joining me. Today you're going to learn so many things, it's going to make your head spin. I'm going to tell you how to identify an air bubble in the acrylic, how to push back the cuticles with the nail file, how to identify a lopsided nail, how to check the balance by looking down the nail plate, and how to remove stains from the back side of the nail, so stay tuned. First of all, removing super glittery nail polish is a huge pain in the ass, and I should have used my electric file to buff the whole surface of the nail before I even picked up the cotton ball. I end up filing it off with a nail file, but I make a huge mess. So if I were you, use your electric file when you have a super glittery nail polish. Alright, the first item on the list is how to identify an air bubble in an acrylic. So take a look at this pinky nail. You can see that it kind of looks funny. It's got like a yellowish tint down at the base of the cuticle, and it's pretty big. And that is telling you that there is some kind of problem. When you first look at it, it doesn't really look like it's lifted. The edges are still adhered, so I'm really going to use my nippers to press down and then squeeze them to chip out a piece of acrylic so I can get down underneath that air bubble. Once I've gotten the edge of it started, then you can go ahead and really get into the air bubble to pick it all off. If I were just to fill around this, it would eventually work its way out to the edges and it would lift before she came in for her next fill. So you always want to get any air bubble that's close to the edges off before you fill the nails. Now on her ring finger you can see that she does have an air bubble, but it's in the center of the nail, and I don't think it's going to work its way out to the edges. No matter how many times we tell our clients that nails are jewels and not tools, they're still going to be hard on their nails, and they are still going to use them in the daily events of their job. And she has a really physical job, and she does use her hands a lot. Now you can tell when I'm going to nip the lifted acrylic that the acrylic is very, very flush with the natural nail. When you finish a nail and you're doing the filing at the cuticle, you want the acrylic to be as blended with the natural nail as possible. The more blended it is with the natural nail, the less lifting there will be. Sometimes when this client comes in, I haven't scheduled any additional time for any nail art, and she loves to get nail art. So to save a little bit of time today, I'm going to use my fingernail file to push back her cuticles and then go ahead and blend, just so I'm not touching one more implement. I'm just trying to save a couple of minutes of time. After pushing back the cuticles, we're going to shorten the nail, file the sidewalls, and blend the old acrylic into the natural nail. I'm using an acid primer today. I'm going to apply one coat of primer now, and then I'm going to have to apply another coat right before I apply the bead of acrylic. Now, applying acrylic is all about control and timing. I'm going to place the bead of acrylic onto the nail. I'm going to wait for it to settle and set up a little bit, and then I'm just going to tap it and move it close to the cuticle and wait for it to settle down until it's not super shiny, and then I'm going to smooth the surface and blend it into place. The more careful you are while you're applying the acrylic, the less filing you'll have to do when it dries. Now watch when I place this bead of acrylic onto the nail. I am not going to get it super close to the cuticle. I'm going to let it sit for a couple of seconds so it starts to flatten down, and then when I press into the ball, I'm not pressing up close towards the cuticle. I put the brush in the center of the ball and then just applied a little bit of a pressure to scoot the ball of acrylic toward the cuticle. And then I'm just pressing it and blending it into the old acrylic. Number one struggle nail technicians have with clients is clients holding their fingers up. See how I had to tap her middle finger? And I just told her, let your finger rest on my hand, because when they're holding their fingers up, it puts tension on all of the other fingers and they're just too straight. I need for her fingers to be pointed in a downward position. You'll see me occasionally lift the finger up so I can look down the barrel of the nail. That way I can see if there's any lumps, bumps, or divots that I need to smooth before the acrylic gets too dry. You'll see the nail looks a little chalky. It's where the primer has dried, and I need the primer to be wet when I apply this acrylic. When you use an acid primer, the primer needs to be wet when it adheres to the acrylic. After I filled this pinky nail at the cuticle line, I lifted up to look down the barrel of the nail to make sure everything is symmetrical, and I noticed that on the left side of the nail it looks like there's a missing spot. So I'm going to pick up the nail file and hold it up to the nail wall, and there is a missing triangle piece that you can see needs to be added to it. And after I identify where the missing spot is by using my nail file, then I know right where to add the extra acrylic. There is another missing spot on this nail too. I'm going to show you the missing spot by using the nail file again, and then I'm going to add the acrylic to balance out the shape. In a few minutes I'm going to explain my filing method to you, but right now we're going to talk about how you should have the same routine whenever you file someone's fingernails. You should always file the sidewalls, the free edge, then go along the cuticle line, then file the top of the nail, and then taper the tip. I'm also going to demonstrate to you how to make sure everything is symmetrical by drawing an imaginary line down the center of the nail. And once you envision that line going down the center of the nail, you can tell if one side is higher than the other side and if the free edge is shaped symmetrically. So on a square nail shape, the free edge should be perpendicular to that imaginary line that we drew down the nail plate. And then you can determine if the sides of your nail are going to be super sharp or if you're going to round them a little bit. Now I'm going to demonstrate how to protect the client's skin with your thumb. You're going to keep the thumb very, very close to the nail, so when you slide your fingernail file in there, that you're only filing the acrylic nail and not their skin. And then very carefully you're going to go around the cuticle area, and you're holding the nail file at a slight angle, so only the very edge of that nail file is sliding right down into that space where the cuticle skin meets the nail plate. And now I'm going to hold the nail up. I'm going to protect the skin with my index finger, so that nail file, even if I'm going super fast, that it's never going to hit that skin at the back. Here I pull back the skin to expose any acrylic that touched the skin and perfect the sidewalls. When you file the cuticle area, keep your thumb very close to the nail to cover the client's skin, so when you sit the nail file on the acrylic, you'll hit your thumb before you hit their skin. Now that I've blended the left side, center, and right side of the cuticle area, I place my thumb under the client's thumb to serve as a platform to rest the thumb, and I place my index finger right up to the acrylic at the cuticle area to protect the skin of the finger. When filing the nails, you should always stick to a routine. You should always do the same thing on each fingernail. So here I'm filing the sidewalls, just making sure that my tip is straight, going around the left side, the cuticle area, the right side, lifting up the nail. Now while I am filing this nail, I'm constantly looking down the barrel of the nail to make sure that my nail has symmetry. Every now and then I stop, take a peek, and then continue to file until I like the shape. Here I'm going to show you what the nail looks like when you're looking down the barrel of the nail, so you can tell if your tip is tapered enough and your shape is symmetrical on the left and the right sides. Now when you start using this method and trying to get your thumb as close to the cuticle as you can while you're filing, you might hit your thumb quite often and cause a little raw spot in your skin. So they do make some wraps that you can wrap around your thumb just to protect it until you get the hang of it. Or you can put like a band-aid around your thumb. Sometimes in the past I've even put a little drop of nail glue on it to form like a permanent band-aid. Well, not permanent, but a little protective area. Now it's going to take some practice using this method because you have to keep a couple of things in mind. You have to keep a forward motion, backward motion, all while applying pressure downward. So you've got to be able to push the file up and over to the right, pull the file down and over to the left, all while exuding pressure downwards on the nail plate. But once you get the hang of it, this method will speed up your nail fill service like you can't believe. So here I'm talking to my client just about reshaping the nail. We want the nail to look as natural as possible. I think that everybody's nails should look a little bit different. Nobody should have the same fingernail. You know, it just looks like a generic fingernail slapped on everybody's hands. So the nail should be tapered at the cuticle, and if you have shortened the fingernail a lot, you're going to have to taper the tip. And if they've gone 2 weeks, 3 weeks, depending on how long they went in between fills, now that arch is going to be in a different location. So you're going to have to taper the tip and file the height of that arch down a little bit and taper the back of the nail into the cuticle all at the same time. Occasionally it's going to be necessary for you to clean underneath the nail plate with a drill bit. This client works with a lot of chemicals and she does a lot of cleaning in her job, and so her nails get stained quite often. You don't want to file off too much of the nail because if they get too thin, they're going to get soggy and then peel away from the acrylic, but you just want to buzz off the stain that's in the top surface layer of that nail plate. Okay, it's time to polish the nails, and what a lot of new nail techs struggle with is that they're still applying nail polish too thick. You only want to transfer the nail polish from the brush to the nail plate. So watch how much pressure I'm applying to the bristles so the bristles flatten out, and then you pull the brush off the nail plate. The same technique that we used for the base coat, we're going to use for the color too. When you apply the brush onto the nail plate, you're going to sit it about a millimeter away, and then you're going to push it forward and then draw it down the nail plate. You don't have to get super close to the cuticle on the first pass because you can reposition the brush and get a tiny bit closer on the second time you go around. Okay, it's time to apply the second coat of nail polish. I'm going to slow this down for you so you can see. I'm going to sit it about a millimeter away. I'm going to push it up, and I'm going to get as close as I can to the cuticle. Now on the left side of the nail, I'm pressing down a little bit more to utilize that edge of the bristles so I can get as close to the cuticle without getting it all over the skin, and the same on the right side of the nail. I'm going to do a really simple nail art design. I'm going to use a small brush and dab some glitter onto the surface of all of the pink nails. And then I'm going to use a striping brush and some rhinestones to make a design on the accent nail. People always ask me what I use to get my rhinestones to stay on the polish, and I don't use anything. I just pick the rhinestone up with my dotting tool and I press it into the nail polish a little bit. you know, it's got a little bit of depth. It's not all the way dry yet, so you can press it into it. And then I just put clear polish on top and they stay on. So anybody who's having a problem with their rhinestones staying on, just try that. Don't forget to subscribe to the Meticulous Manicurist nail tutorials, where we're setting a new standard in nail education, utilizing real life, real situations for real learning.